everybody, Arctic Ninja Paul here, and I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on the new movie Godzilla vs. Kong. Surely you've heard of it. Surely you're probably very excited for it. I know that I was, and I got a slightly sneak peek look at it. I know that there's a lot of reviews coming in from overseas, particularly in China, where it is slaying the box office and is looking to be the biggest hit since COVID at the theaters. So here's my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong. So to start off, we do have a lot of recurring characters from Godzilla King of the Monsters. And full disclosure, I loved Godzilla King of the Monsters. I saw it at Toho Studios in Japan, so it was all kind of an experience, and maybe that had something to do with it. But I really enjoyed it. Regardless of that, I had a lot of fun with it, and I know some people did, some people did not. And so it goes. Personally, I thought it was the best of the American-made Godzilla movies to date. So right off the bat, the movie does not waste any time getting to the monsters, so you can rest easy there. Whereas the 2014 Godzilla gave us, I think, 11 minutes of Godzilla, which is, not much and not really worth it for me, especially when they killed Bryan Cranston within the first 30 minutes. I thought that was a waste. The movie really kind of pissed me off. I thought Godzilla looked great, but ultimately that one just kind of fell flat for me. Godzilla King of the Monsters was a massive improvement. We had tons of monsters, and that's what I was there for. Some of the recurring characters coming back, you have Millie Bobby Brown coming back, and you also have Kyle Chandler coming back as the father-daughter duo, although I'd hardly call them a duo as their parts are rather minuscule, especially Kyle Chandler's part, so not really quite sure why they're in this other than to tie the movies together. They don't really play as big a role as you might think. They're more just kind of backup players. Of course, for whatever reason, they have to continue to bring in new players for the movies, which kind of kills any momentum you would have for building characters in these movies. So they bring in, for this one, Rebecca Hall, who everybody loves. Rebecca Hall, she's great. And Alexander Skarsgård as a doctor who has been researching a way to get to what they call Hollow Earth. The problem that this kind of presents for me in this movie is the people, the characters that we're supposed to care about, that we're supposed to like, that are supposed to give us kind of a in for the monsters world, just aren't quite that interesting. And they never quite rise to the challenge of being anything other than fodder. However, they do have charisma, and they are good actors and recognizable actors, so that's always good. Problem is with somebody like Alexander Skarsgård in a movie like this guy, this is Tarzan. This is, Eric the Vampire. This is, somebody that kind of exudes a strength. I mean, the guy's like 6'3" and like shredded. They kind of have him playing like this wimpy doctor who is supposed to like find his courage, which is all well and good, I suppose. But ultimately, a role like that should have gone to an actor of lesser stature. That would have been a little more interesting to see them rise to the challenge. But with Alexander Skarsgård, you kind of expect it, right? It's Alexander Skarsgård. Also showing up in this movie is Julian Dennison, who you might remember from Hunt for the Wilder People and Deadpool 2. Not quite as funny or given the opportunity to stretch his comedic range, which he has shown in prior films, but it's nice to see him continuing to get work and show up. I think that he could very well be something special as time goes on, now that he's kind of getting out of the kid roles and moving into the more teen adult style roles. We'll see what happens. Also joining the cast is Damian Bichir and Eiza Gonzalez, both great actors, fun actors. However, they're very cartoonish. Damian Bichir is kind of a, evil, I guess evil. He's not really evil. I guess when you really break down the story, which I'm not going to spoil, this is spoiler light. However, his motives and everything don't quite really add up to an evil scheme. I think I'd probably, if I lived in that actual world, I might actually support his scheme. Doesn't really sound like that bad of an idea, but that's neither here nor there. That's really not what we're here for. But anyways, he plays a whiskey drinking kind of bad guy that's just goes off on his tangents with his big grand plan, which just ain't evil enough, people. Eiza Gonzalez plays his daughter, who's supposed to be as evil, I suppose. I don't know. It's hard to buy that. Godzilla vs. Kong is one of those movies where I know that the constant argument is you don't have to care about the characters to like the movie. And a big part of me agrees with that. This part agrees. But It'd be nice if we could care just a little bit more. But they just don't make him interesting. Probably the most interesting character they could cock for this is Jaylee Hoddle, who plays Gia, who is the last remaining indigenous person from Kong Skull Island. So she, for whatever reason, she's mute and she's able to communicate with sign language with Kong. And so she kind of has this kinship with him and is able to communicate throughout the movie. Think of her as like his interpreter to a point. So that's your cast. They also have Lance Reddick, and with a voice and a presence like Lance Reddick, I don't even know if he says anything. I don't know if his part just got cut down big time or what, but he barely says anything. I was also a little perplexed that they didn't have like Charles Dance come back and a couple of the other characters from the last film. Would have made more sense because events from Godzilla King of the Monsters absolutely tie into Godzilla vs. Kong. So the characters, the human characters, that is, not so interesting. If that's a problem for you, then there's a good chance you'll have a problem with Godzilla vs. Kong. But on the flip side, if you're coming into Godzilla vs. Kong and you just want to see kaijus beat the shit out of each other, you've come to the right movie, okay? I enjoyed the hell out of Godzilla vs. Kong overall. The visual effects are sharp. They're gorgeous. Like, we finally reached a point, I think, with these kaiju movies where the effects no longer feel like, oh, that's VFX, that's VFX. Now you can just allow yourself to be wowed by them. And that's a great thing, because now we can just be like, whoa, shit, that's awesome. That makes me happy. And that's what we want to see, especially in a movie like this. And the best way that I can describe Godzilla vs. Kong is it is a theme park ride. Absolutely a theme park ride. Like, think of any of like the big rides at Universal or Disney or wherever, and you get on, you have this crazy experience, you go, wow, and then you get off the ride and you're like, yeah, that was pretty fun. That is what Godzilla vs. Kong is, and I actually think it's really just a breath of fresh air, especially after all the crap we've been through in the last year. It's really nice just to have this kind of movie where you can just sit back and enjoy the carnage and the wreckage. It's just a lot of fun in that way. It also takes a lot of the monster stuff and expands on it and has a little more fun kind of with the Hollow Earth stuff, and it introduces other different types of creatures and different beasts and other stuff that I don't want to spoil, which is a lot of fun. That's what we want to see. That's, I think, when you come into something like Godzilla vs. Kong, even though you want to have that human investment connection, sadly, it's not really there. It's just not. It's not fully developed. If you can get past that, you're going to have a great time with this movie. If everything hinges to you on the human connection, you're probably going to have a lot of problems. The truth is, a lot of the things that the human characters do is pretty boring, pretty standard, pretty much in the same vein as like where you're kind of yelling at the TV or the theater screen. You're just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? What is wrong with you? Stuff like that, which can get pretty annoying. And also fun when people do dumb stuff that ends up costing them their lives in a monster movie or maybe save the day, whatever the case may be, then it can be fun. The other thing that I felt with Godzilla vs. Kong that kind of measured up in terms of the other films or leveled up rather, is the sci-fi elements. I thought those were really fun, and I thought there were some really fun twists and turns there, especially when they get to Hollow Earth. I thought the Hollow Earth stuff was really, really cool. And I think you'll enjoy that. It really opens up the environment, or the universe, rather, of this Monsterverse for massive exploration, and also to cut down on the collateral damage on Earth in a big, big way. Not that there isn't collateral damage, because of course there always is. You expect that. You expect as much. However, if they were to make subsequent films, which I hope they do, I just hope they never stop making the monster movies, like these giant kaiju movies. They're so much fun. It's great junk food for the brain and the best time. In terms of gore, violence, and things like that, this is a PG-13. There are people that get killed, although you don't really see like blood and guts from people, but you do see kind of blood and guts of creatures, and I thought that was pretty cool. And you see it in a couple different ways. You see a couple different throwbacks, all the way to Kong Skull Island, King of the Monsters, and the first Godzilla. They all kind of tie together and kind of come together, so that they're all existing in this same universe. But in terms of the violence quotient, there is some pretty intense stuff. So if you're taking your little ones there, you're taking littler kids, you know, hey, we're gonna go see Godzilla vs. Kong, you know, you're gonna know your kids better than anybody else. But I'm just telling you that there are moments, there's beheadings, there's animals that get eviscerated, there is blood and guts and that kind of stuff. But you know, for those that can handle it, they're gonna have a blast. For those that are a little more freaked out, you might have to cover their eyes, or just don't bring them, or don't let them watch it at home. I think one of the other issues that I did have with this movie was the suspense factor. It's low because the stakes never really come clear. It's all very kind of out there sci-fi stuff where you're just like, you just kind of have to accept it, like, okay, I guess. But it never, listen, there's monsters, kaijus, stomping all over the earth. I don't see how anybody, just in a realistic sense, goes on with their daily life in a way that's just normal. What's normal when you have kaijus walking all over the place and they could stomp on your city at any minute? Like, I think in any realistic sense, we'd all just be living in fear nonstop. Like, just nothing would be ever normal again. So you kind of have to accept that. However, that being said, because we've already accepted what this world is, the suspense really just doesn't feel there. It doesn't feel like, oh man, we only got a few minutes before everything goes to hell. You're kind of just waiting in between battles, and that's fine. It's not that big of a deal, but ultimately it'd be nice if these had a little bit more of a suspense factor, because it's just not really there. And they tend to just add one little task or one little device or one thing or another to kind of build that up, and it just hasn't really come to fruition yet. I haven't really felt any true suspense in these movies, but I have definitely felt thrills. So at least we can check that box, and that makes me happy. And you know, one thing I have to address here is all of these Godzilla movies, from Godzilla 2014, King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and I don't think so much as a Kong Skull Island, as there were no kids in the movie, but the Godzilla and Kong movies at this point, Kong Skull Island outside, are pretty much examples of, or the worst examples of parenting. Godzilla 2014, you have Scarlet Witch just giving her kid to like some bus driver to drive her kid across a bridge, and then she just starts running around the city for some reason. Whatever. I never understood that logic. That movie is one of the most illogical movies ever. It's complete fodder. And then in King of the Monsters, you know, Millie Bobby Brown, you know, she's constantly escaping and running off these damn kids. They're constantly just running off. Who is watching these kids? They're worse than Carl from The Walking Dead. Like, who are watching these children? And once again, Millie Bobby Brown, she's like, she's all listening to Brian Tyree Henry's podcast, and his character is just kind of like this conspiracy theorist podcaster. It's dumb. It's dumb. And of course, the relationship between her and Kyle Chandler is all strained. And then she runs off to Hong Kong. And of course, he like finds her at the end, and I'm just like, what? How did he find her that fast? First off, why did he lose her? Like, first, if you have a kid that's already run off to Boston during a massive kaiju storm, why would you should be under house arrest or something? So, the kids in these movies are kind of like unforgivable. They should all be locked up. They're terrible kids, and the parents should be locked up too because they can't seem to control their kids. So ultimately, the Godzilla movies, as fun as the monster stuff is, it's pretty much the best cinematic example of bad parenting. Don't be like Godzilla parents. Don't do it. So all that said, all of my little problems that I had with the movie, ultimately, I really enjoyed it. I had a blast, I gotta say. I wanted to get the bad stuff out of the way right off the bat, but the truth is, there were so many like visually great moments. The Godzilla vs. Kong battle stuff is great, and they absolutely leaned into the fact that you're watching a movie called Godzilla vs. Kong. Okay, this isn't like Godzilla 2014 where you spend an hour and a half to watch a really dark, murky battle that you can barely make out. This is in your face, punching, kicking, zapping, cutting, tossing, everything. It's a monster mash, if you will. And not just between Godzilla and Kong. And there are absolutely clear winners. That might be a spoiler. If you like theme park rides, you're going to like Godzilla vs. Kong. I had a blast with it. And I will say even though this is going on HBO Max, and that's kind of exciting that you could stay at home and get everybody together and watch Godzilla versus Kong, I have to say the whole time I was watching it, I was thinking, man, I wish I was in the theater watching this, which is why tomorrow I'm going to see this in the theater with my kid, and we're going to have a blast. If you have the means, you have the ability, and you feel safe doing so, highly recommend going to the theater for this one. It really is worth it. This is the kind of movie that you go to the theater to see. I get it that some movies are like, something like The Little Things with Denzel Washington. Man, totally, I get it. You can stay home and watch that. Godzilla versus Kong, just not a bad idea to go to the theater for that one. So I'm going to go tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. But ultimately, I think you're going to have a great time. This is a fun movie. It's a theme park ride. It's got crappy characters, terrible parrots, and awesome monsters beating the shit out of each other. So I hope you guys check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Maybe you feel the same, maybe you don't. Either way, choice is yours. Make up your mind. Watch on HBO Max, or you can go see it in the theaters if you feel good or you feel safe or you're in a place where you can. Go for it. Go and do it. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification button as well so you can get a notice every time I put up a new video or when I go live, which I try to do at least once a week. So thanks again. Hope you enjoyed the movie, and I'll see you guys in the next one.